Okay, good afternoon. This is the Town of Harpswell Budget Advisory Committee meeting on Monday, December 16th, 2024. We will introduce ourselves, starting with Dave.
Dave Zamorowski.
And I'm Linda Hall.
March Webster Warren.
Martin Pulsifer.
And Jane Meisenbach walking through the door. Come on in, Jane.
Hey, Jane.
And I also have been asked to remind everyone to speak into the microphones when you speak. You two at the end have to share. Sorry about that. Thank you. So we all got an agenda, and is there a motion to approve the agenda? Moved and seconded?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, that was unanimous. So item 3 on the agenda, consensus on the following previously discussed budget items. We have the solar consultant for $12,000 from the Spira Reserve, which sustainability,
Plan Implementation Reserve Account.
okay. Spira.
We like
That's easier to
acronyms.
say. It's easier to say than all that.
No one can remember.
Okay, so how's everybody with that?
I'd like to make a comment on it,
Okay.
if I could.
Please.
I thought a lot about this week. More than $12,000 perhaps is justified on my agenda. And the reason is, it took me a while to discover this because I've been out of the business world for a long time, is that the little items are important because if you don't treat them as important, then the big items start to not be important. And in that context, I think that this proposal, and this was reflected in the comments of several of the board members, I think it conflates the issue of the current electric budget with the exploration of various alternatives. And it further confuses the issue with respect, and this isn't anyone's objective, but in my mind, it confuses the issue by essentially taking this out of the current budget and taking it out of the Spira reserve, so it does not reflect spending. But the bottom line is this is spending. This is $12,000 of spending, and this is an issue that I am concerned with. This is antithetical to the way that I would manage my own budget. I would start with a robust understanding of what it is that I have now and what it costs. And I think that was tacked on at the end of the Energy and Technology Committee's request. But I think that's, in my view, that's the heart of the matter. We don't know exactly what it costs now. It's a complicated issue, and it relies on the availability of sufficient information to find that out. But I think that is the primary issue. And the town needs to know what its current situation costs before it goes and evaluates alternatives. Break-evens on solar rooftop are extended. It's not as though there's some phenomenal budget bargain to be had here. Break-evens range from, I looked at various estimates, from probably 9 years out to 14 years, depending on the kind of installation you have. So it's not like there's a big budget opportunity here. I think the bigger opportunity is in understanding what we have in a robust way, and I would be in favor of allocating monies to do that first, less than $12,000, and based on what we see and learn in that, I would suggest that perhaps the rest is justified to be spent on the evaluation of a variety of different alternatives that were discussed.
David,
Yeah.
were you able to zero in your judgment of what the areas are that we don't know? Because that's the brain, that's what's in my mind too. I think I heard correctly, I hope, that it really was the credits were charged to the wrong account somehow, and that needs to be straightened out. And if that is straightened out, then we can receive the benefit of those credits in the town. And the committee looking at this could not penetrate this mystery, and so said, let's get a consultant. And maybe that's a simplistic answer, but that's what I heard.
I had reported that we had straightened out the credits because they have been used. We lost some. There's other issues, for example, like you should have banked some credits in the summertime. We went into the winter with no bank, really. There's one account with a small bank on it. So we do wonder how that solar farm is working and why we're not getting some banks from it. But the credits, we know the source of that because we converted to LED. They used our prior electrical bill for issuing the credits. We then converted to LED. Our power usage was dramatically cut, and they kept giving us the credits based on the old usage. So, and we do know what we pay. I think Dave said we should figure out what we pay. We see our bills, we pay, we can tell you what we've paid. And maybe I took that too literal. Maybe you just said, maybe I should have taken it as,
Oh,
we
what's
really
the
need to
cost?
understand what it is
Yeah,
that
we-
we're paying.
Because we asked, I think, at least a couple of times, what the cost per kilowatt hour is relative to what CMP
We don't get
charges
those
would have been.
reports.
And I think that's, to me, that's the bottom line. That's the way I look at our own solar reports. So it's a big mystery. I mean, Terry is the gold standard with respect to whatever understanding we have of this, but it's bizarre to me that we do not have any credits at this time of year, because that's what solar is all about. It's about banking. If you have solar, you're banking from probably March up through September, depending on the size of your array and your usage. So that should be where you get the biggest bang to get you through the rest of the year.
American?
Terry, what company do we use?
Nautilus is the processor. The solar farm is Quarry Solar Farm.
Corey's Farm. Just as a perspective, I use Nexamp, and it's 18 cents a kilowatt hour.
I don't, just to be clear, I'm not against further exploration. I think there's a core issue that needs to be solved prior to that happening. What are you comparing against? And I think there's some, based on everything that I've heard, there's some sorting out to be done that's important, rather than tossing the whole salad at once. Forgive the metaphor.
I get it. How do we get our hands around that, answering that question? And I guess the question is for you.
I think what I'm hearing from Dave, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of more of a two-step process. The first phase would be really understanding this. What is the kilowatt price we're paying? How are these credits working? Are they working the way we thought they were going to work? Are we losing out in the current proposal that we have? And making a decision about whether or not we continue with that company. And then there's the second phase, which is more, what are all the options the town should be looking about when it comes to solar? Is it panels on the new recycling center roof? Is it, we heard about panels in the parking lots?
Yeah.
What are some of the ideas and considerations that the town should give to solar?
But for all of those, I think that's an accurate reflection. I think for all of those, what are you comparing them to, right? When you're looking at alternatives, the basis is what we're doing today and what it costs today. You have to start there. I don't understand how you can start anywhere else, right? And so I would either fund this in two parts. I would approve some. There are two ways to go about this. One is give the town the discretion for the $12,000, and with the proviso that you need to answer this question first as part one, and maybe that's a fourth, whatever it costs to do that part of the work. And then predicated on that, go ahead with the rest, or Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the or is. Give them the okay, or just approve a for whatever it is. Have them come back and say, here's our budget for just doing this one piece, and we approve that budget.
Do we,
Marge had her hand up.
Go ahead, Megan.
I'm sorry, do we have the resources in the town to answer Dave's question?
The
About
first
what
part.
are we doing now? Or do we need to hire some outside person to delve in?
I think we need somebody with some expertise to help us understand why are we not banking credits when we think we should be banking credits?
Okay,
I think we kind of got to the point where we understood losing them at that point, because it was being based on prior usage before we
the LED.
went to the LEDs.
Right.
So, when we signed this contract, we had to give them certain accounts with certain usage of those accounts, and then the streetlight usage went down, caused some problems.
And
I
the
don't-
credits were going to that account?
They won't let you switch between, so prior to joining the subscription, you give them copies of your bills for the prior year before
that
we
was our
entered
biggest
it.
one.
And so the credits for the streetlights, that was, Rhonda has spent a lot of time on this, and she tried to get them to apply them to a different account that we didn't have enough credits for. And so CMP points at Nautilus, Nautilus points at CMP. We don't have a valid contact at Nautilus, if you will. And so I do just want to address the funding. So, Dave asked, and just so you know, so out of the SPIRA fund, I mean, that is true money being spent. It's just not a separate warrant article. If the committee agrees that the full amount or a portion is to be recommended out of the SPIRA reserve, that doesn't go to town meeting. The select board, it will go on a select board agenda. They make the decision up to $50,000. Over $50,000, town meeting has to approve it. So we could certainly report fully to the select board your concerns, and the select board could, like if we got a price to help us with the current one, we would go to the select board at one meeting to use, I'm just making this up, $4,000 for that study, and then go back about the balance for looking at alternatives. So that's at a select board level. I don't know if that helps how you split up your recommendation.
So even with this 12,000, it wouldn't be a budget item or a warrant article?
It would not,
It would
there's a
just go to
separate
the select-
SPIRA warrant article where that is being increased because there's some proposed uses down,
Right,
but,
but you're right.
right, that's to,
Down to reserve.
right.
Marge, you had something to
I
add.
do. I'm more confused now than I was before. Am I correct that because they use, the kilowatt usage is off from before the new lighting, do we now have an idea how much potentially we can bank? And how long is the subscription, or what, the plan that you signed up for? Is that a one-year plan, two-year plan,
You have to give a year's notice if you're getting out of the plan.
which we haven't done?
Not yet.
So
No.
then we'd be the same issue again this summer, right? But not.
Well, we were hoping to find out what's going on with
Right.
the quarry farm prior to that.
When you say you're hoping to find out, this consultant's going to hope to find out, or you're hoping that Corey will tell you?
We need some help. Staff has failed finding a good contact and getting answers to our questions. And I want to rephrase that. Staff has made incredible attempts to find answers to this, but you do not get the answers that you're looking
That you're
for.
looking for?
We do know what it costs us, and if you look at your account number 3,600, we went through explaining that,
Wait a second, wait.
what it truly, even though the costs, 2023 is when we got our large credit, and so we know that streetlights will cost us about $5,400 a year. So that's why we budgeted 6,000, but, yeah, we lost 1,630. And so we got that credit because of the conversion to LED. So we're just trying to, as you all have heard, we were in a contract with somebody else prior to on streetlights, and we were paying less per kilowatt. I shouldn't compare it to per kilowatt, because our streetlight bill was certainly less than what we are.
So per kilowatt's perfectly
Right,
valid.
right. Well, except that I don't really know what the credit per kilowatt is, so I didn't want to get caught up on giving you one and not the other. So that is the information we're looking for, and while the Energy and Technologies write-up had that at the end, I don't think it was in any way intended to say that that would be the last thing that would be done. I just want to clarify that, and maybe that conversation didn't come across that way, but it bothers the Energy and Technology Committee about this subscription as well, and the chair tried to help and review some bills and help in any way that he could as well. So, and that's why we all step back and kind of say, we really need to figure it out. Mackin had said that it took you a couple of years before it evened out, and so you were glad to hear that we were giving it some more time. We just need somebody to help us with it. Do we give a year's notice, or is this going to, the whole banking issue? You know, you can talk, you can have get-togethers. Rhonda was at a get-together where she hears that, you know, if you're not get banking credits in the summertime, that solar farm must not be producing at 100%. So, you know, we don't know this
But it
kind of
wasn't-
stuff.
yeah.
And you can sit around and talk. We would prefer to not sit around and talk anymore. We would like some assistance.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
As part of the to-do list for whether the town does it directly or we hire a consultant, I would suggest doing a survey of the variety of solar farms that service Maine, and saying, we are the town of Harpswell, we buy electricity for various things, street lighting, this building, so forth. Just like a house, we want to have it considered one bill from your point of view, and the credits are created and then used accordingly, not divvied around between different accounts, which all seems a bit false to me. And ask them, do they do that? Will you allow that to happen?
Terry, do the net metering arrangements the CMP has allow for that?
When we ask them to apply, allow for one bill,
Yeah.
you know, we get a separate CMP bill for every single account.
Yeah.
Well, I can perfectly understand from our point of view having different accounts, because we need to keep track of things. But from the real
Yeah.
sort of basic, we are one entity, we buy electricity for a variety of different things. And why shouldn't the credits and the use of the credits be applied basically to our total usage? And find out whether, because these people must deal with other towns that have exactly the same problems.
I don't think you're going to get, CMP got to the point where you can link all your accounts together, and so we can see everything, but per meter, they're not going to split up into one invoicing, and so then the solar company is crediting per each. Now, we all agree, the argument should be, if you have so many credits on this one, we should be able to apply it to something else, and that's when each company pointed fingers at the other company. But again, this will go, I don't know where the committee wants to go with this. Again, it would go to the selectman level. And it could still go, even if this full committee doesn't want to hire a consultant on this. You know, the selectman could still say, you know, the budget committee didn't recommend this, but we need to figure out exactly what we have, and they could vote to use some SPIRA funding to do that research. Of course, they would like to hear from their committee.
And I think, my sense is that we agree that the request to have a consultant help us untangle the current community solar is well-founded. Beyond that, I think you need to do that as a first discrete step. I don't.
Get those answers.
Get those
And
answers,
then go to
and
the
then
select
go.
board for,
Yeah.
with the report, and have the select board decide what the next step is, if the next step is needed. is there an idea of how much we would recommend? Right now, it's $12,000, 60 hours at $200 an hour.
That's for the whole enchilada.
The whole thing, right. Do we say half of it? Seems like half is too much.
That's too much, just the
A
first.
third of it? Or,
You could either do that, or you could say,
We don't know.
at
We
the
don't
select
know.
board's discretion, based on input from staff and from the Energy Committee, right? Because they probably couldn't tell you now either. They'd have to have a conversation with the consultant, say, we're thinking about a two-step process here. Let's get through the first step, which I honestly think is a good run with the consultant that we
so they
apparently
negotiate
haven't
that
used
with
before
the
anyway.
consultant. Yeah, with a consultant, well.
But that's the Energy Committee's
Yeah.
issue.
Or,
to-
and the
to
select,
wrestle with.
the select board too, because they're gonna decide how to spend the
Legal
money.
advice.
I'm sorry, Jane.
Maybe legal advice if they're not
Could you
responding.
speak into the microphone?
Sorry. I was thinking maybe involve a lawyer because they're not responding. The company themselves seem to be responsible for this.
I don't think it's a legal issue from what we understand. It's
Okay.
the lack of sharing information between CMP and Nautilus that's causing some of the problems. But if we involve legal, you're talking a whole
Oh,
new
yeah.
ballgame. I think you might as well get a consultant to take a look at this and help the town sort this out. I don't know that it needs to go to legal at this point.
So I think I heard the committee saying you could stand behind some amount. It would go on a select board agenda for the first step, which would be at the select board's discretion with working with energy and technology and the consultant again about how much the funding would be to resolve step one before considering step two, alternative energy sources such as solar panels.
And so when you distill that down to its essence, does that mean we should approve the 12 conditional on that kind of, or along with that kind of advice we just described to the select board and staff? Would that be
Well-
sufficient to accomplish everything?
And I did just want to add, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If the consultant said, I think you should get legal advice on this issue, then I think we should. But I don't think we should just jump into that without having someone with expertise in the area really looking at this and giving us some good guidance and information.
So would the resolution here be step one, step two, to the selectmen, which is what Terry very nicely summarized? Would we be in agreement with that?
Step one being,
Step one being basically figure out what we have, figure out how much it's costing us, figure out how much we're saving with the current plan.
yes.
Yes.
And go from there.
And then go from there. If it doesn't seem, if the consultant says this really is a bad deal or whatever, comes back with that report, leave it to the discretion of the select board to decide to spend more money on alternatives.
Because it's very well possible that everyone takes a look at the tangle of worms untangled and says, A, this is a great deal, or B, this is a terrible deal, or somewhere in between, but it may inform the direction and the specifics of the next step, right? So I don't think it's sort of just a placeholder. I think it's an important piece of information to guide the whole process, and an important process.
Okay, Madigan?
With respect to the consultant, is there in your judgment, I'm asking for, as you assess where we are, that the consultant is going to get good, precise instructions of what they're going to do and what we expect? Because consultants can take a vague question and run with it. $12,000
Yep.
is gone and nothing is produced.
Right.
What is your opinion at
I
this
think that
moment?
can be very clear. It's look at our current, here's our contract, here's our bills. Please evaluate our relationship. What is it costing us per kilowatt? Why aren't we banking credits? Is this relationship a good value for the town of Harpswell? With more specificity, but I can't sit here and
But we
spell
have
that all out for you.
spreadsheets that we can share.
We have,
Yeah,
oh, we have
yeah,
so much
yeah,
information.
Yeah.
And you've probably spent hours and hours on this.
Fine, I'm-
Rhonda has.
Would that be an engagement through the town staff, or would that be through the energy committee? How would that
Well,
operate?
any contract's going to go through the select board.
Okay, but in terms of the ongoing interface,
We might involve the committee at some point if we thought that would be helpful and valuable.
okay,
But they don't technically, need to be very involved.
they're not going to necessarily manage it. The
No,
town will manage it.
no.
Okay.
The town would be managing it after the select
Yeah.
board approved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Are
Just
people,
one
oh, go ahead.
final point I would add to the selectmen's instruction, not selectmen's instructions, the consultant's instructions, that they find out what other companies do for similar clients. I mean, large institutions like Bowdoin College, which must have multiple electric accounts, other towns, and so forth. So you get some perspective.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're worth their salt, that information should be relatively easy to come by.
Does one of us need to come, or if we're in agreement with this proposal right now, does one of us need to come and speak to the select board, or is Jane gonna, and Jane and Terry and Chrissy gonna pick?
We can certainly let you know if you want to
meeting.
come, but we think we've heard you loud and clear, and we can take care of the matter.
If it's somebody from here, it's gonna be one of them, 'cause I don't.
It's so tired of hearing.
Yeah.
But you're in agreement that the revenue
Okay,
source.
well, that was gonna be my next question, is are we in agreement with what's been said here?
So far.
And so far? What does that mean, Jane?
Probably stop there, right?
Stop with it there. For the proposal, which Terry summarized a little while ago, and Mackin has added some things to it, and Dave has too, with a sort of two-step approach to this.
And we've shed sunlight on the problem.
That they've
Okay, is
spent
that,
their work-
do we have
No pun
consensus on that?
intended.
Yes.
Okay, I hear yes, consensus, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Dave, for all that, and Mackin for thinking about that so much.
And we're clear the revenue source is Spira for this? Is that what you agreed to?
I believe that's what we
Okay.
agreed to,
Okay.
yes.
Good luck.
But we have concerns about the way it's being spent, and we've said them, so, okay. All right, moving on. Thank you all for that. The three fire departments, 3200, 3210, 3220. I believe OBI and Cundy's Harbor went up a little bit with their operational expenses. And
You were provided a letter in your packet
yes,
from
we
OBI
got
with
that.
their
Yeah,
reserve
we all got
balances.
that. Do people feel that we need to discuss the letter?
No.
I'm saying a no. So are we okay with the three fire departments? Do you want me to take them separately?
I vote we take them as a group.
As a group, are we all okay?
Yeah.
All right, we're
Yes.
okay. Thank you. Then the municipal fire assistance, dry hydrant, and the emergency management. That's going to add some more help on the weekends.
Yep.
Everybody's good?
Yep,
That's good.
yes.
All right. And the paramedic contract and advanced life support, that's a contract,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So we have to, all right. And as Jonathan explained, what an asset that is to the town now. Okay, we're all good with that. Thank you. So, moving on to item 4, we would discuss our final budget recommendation to go to the select board. Terry provided us with a budget summary, and thank you for the LD1 levy limit calculation. A question on that. I think you said you weren't going to have information on, all the information you needed for that?
We weren't certain if the state was still issuing, but they did issue the personal growth percent
Okay,
for 2025 do not know, it was repealed about the time when they issued that, so not sure if they'll be doing it next year.
Right, but
But I was able to find it for 2025, and then the assessing office did the property growth factor. So I was able to apply those, come up with your LD1 compliant budget of $7.9 million. Proposed appropriations are at 7.8. I don't want to jump the gun, but I'm happy to discuss. There are 2 changes proposed in that budget summary that you have before you that you have not discussed yet.
Okay.
And there's 2 more that have come up.
so 4
today.
altogether.
So four more, but 2 are included in the total that you're seeing.
Okay, do you want to talk to us?
So under 1,000, general government, we added,
Is that one in here?
The top.
No, I'm saying is that, you said some of them are included and some of them aren't.
that one's in the total.
That's in the
That-
total, okay.
But I was going to explain that it was, we added $5,000 to contracted services, so under 1,100,009. And that's, you know, in looking at our last process, when the town went out and issued its own bonds, which may be an option for a centralized fire station, we started with a independent company, at the time, UFASI, United Financial Advisory Services, Inc., I believe, to take a look at the 2 options, the town going through a bank or the bond bank, or issuing its own, and they issued this report that really kind of evaluated the different situations and determined that we would say that came up with a value of, if we issued the bonds ourselves, knowing that there's other cost in issuing it yourself. And we thought it might make sense in 2025, and I think when Christie first reviewed the budget, said that that wasn't included, but we would like to include some funding for that to get that process started. Because depending on how March or a June vote, or depending on how the central fire station comes to conclusion before voters, we need to be ready on what financial source we'll be proceeding with. So we added $5,000 to contracted services for that.
So that's now 15,000.
So that contracted services is now 15,000. The other one in general government that came up today, when I was reconciling ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, we've been using those funds for our new website, including our new mass distribution communication module. And in 2025, there is about $700 short, if you will, for covering those 2 costs from ARPA funds. So I'd like to add $700 under the computer services agreement, the 1,020,004. That one is not in here, but I'm prepared to summarize the totals for you at the end of this.
Okay.
Do you have any questions on either of those before proceeding?
No.
Okay. So under 1,200 facilities is the next one, and this is included in this total because I built in,
Was there something in planning? No? The +4?
that was back in the
Okay,
initial,
that was initial.
That's what
Okay,
they're already part of that.
got it.
This is just what they haven't discussed. So $6,000, I did add back into electricity. I say add back in. I really had not increased electricity, but really not certain how
The heat
the
pumps.
heat pumps are really going to affect next year. And obviously, I cut oil, which is now replaced with propane, but I think Dave at the time had asked, you know, your costs are going up, but you haven't added anything to that. And it's because we had a little excess, but I'm just really nervous about that, and I'd rather have some funding left over that laps to the general fund than to not have enough. So I have increased electricity from 12,000 to 18,000. which on this new budget summary, that 6,000 is already included.
Okay.
Then, under, sorry, where'd my, no, they discussed that too. These are just what they didn't discuss. So under 3,400, the Harbor Master's office,
Oh, yes.
we just got this was also informative to the Budget Committee when this started, that the Harbor Master wanted an office on the water, and we had said that's not included in this budget at the time. We just got the value of a possible relationship that will come to fruition. And so we'd like to add $4,000 for renting an office. Can I say the location?
Yeah.
At the Cook's Lobster Wharf.
So where does it go under Harbor
So under
Master?
3,400, it would be a lease, a contract, so
Contracted service.
So
under contracted services.
So it goes to 34,224, is that correct?
It's not
Probably took some off.
What is 34,000?
That's the
Harbor
increase.
Master.
That's the increase, makes the increase.
You're adding $4,000.
We took off.
But the,
Adding it, right?
Yeah, adding it.
We're
Well,
adding
it'll
it.
be 14,000 now in that request. Is that right?
except,
Yes.
We're at
just to
bottom line.
confuse things more, we had cut
Yeah,
$8,000 out of that
All right.
because it went into marine hazards.
Aha.
Ah, that's right.
So it's
that's right.
actually to 6,000 now.
Okay, so, all right. Whew. I'm glad you keep this all straight.
So then the total harbor master budget would be $166,999.
That seems like a pretty favorable lease rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, would he be there all the time
It's
now,
going to be 8 months of the year,
During the-
potentially.
during the season?
Yeah.
$500
$500 a month.
Again, this is under discussion.
Okay.
Nothing's cast in stone.
What was that final number, Terry?
It's not.
$1,666,999.
And Paul will be able to land his boat by the office, that kind of thing.
That's part of the
He'll
deal.
have a slip on the wharf when he's there.
Wow.
When he's there, yeah.
And if he's not, someone else
Back
can
when
use
was
it, right?
spent.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Preferably
They
for-
heard
for
me.
lunch or
They
dinner.
heard me.
Okay.
It was a joke.
So that was the 4 changes.
Dinghies.
And so that would bring, the budget summary you have is $7,801,847, but if you add $4,700 to that, that brings this budget total to $7,806,547.
Yeah, say that again.
$7,806,547.
So up about 4,500, something like that. I'm not doing math in my
Still up
head anymore.
approximately 6%.
Yeah.
Big change.
Okay, and that puts us still.
And before the committee discusses its final recommendation, that is the total that you're at now, if you agreed with those changes. Just wanted to remind you that the select board will be holding a meeting in January where it continues to discuss and make final recommendations, final wage and salary changes. And since that doesn't involve the committee, we don't bring it back to the committee, but typically every year, but I'd like to ask, is that after those adjustments are made, I certainly inform the chair for her report for the town report, and each warrant article does state the Budget Advisory Committee recommendation. If there's changes outside of wage and salary, we would certainly
Come together again.
bring that
Or
back to
something.
your attention.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
when we started the process, we said there were a few items that weren't included in the budget, and so Terry has mentioned the wage and salary, which is not yet included, those adjustments.
Right.
The harbor master's possible rental costs are now in the budget. There is no money in the proposed budget for the administration building at Mitchell Field. That's an ongoing discussion item. There is no money in the proposed budget for Clark Cove. That's still an item up for discussion. We're waiting for the state to provide us with a management agreement.
What's
Yeah.
the issue with
Pardon?
Clark Cove? What was the,
The town's been talking with the state about managing the state's property at Clark Cove.
oh, right, I got it, yes.
And so just don't really have any idea if there will be any sort of financial impact on the budget. We don't necessarily think so, because we think we can get grants for the kind of work that we're proposing to do, but that's just not been solidified yet. And then there's no money in the budget for the Central Fire Department, or Fire Station, I should call it, Central Emergency Services Building. But Terry did talk about maybe doing a preliminary kind of analysis of what that would do in terms of our borrowing, impacts on tax rate, and, you know, what the cost would be to the town going out on its own for the bond versus going through an entity like the Maine Municipal Bond Bank. So when we did that analysis previously, it was kind of done with the thought that the pier at Mitchell Field, to deconstruct it, was gonna be in the $5 million range, but that ended up being like a $3.5 million project. So we didn't end up borrowing as much as we originally thought we might have to.
Do you think there's a similar level of conservatism in this estimate
For the central,
for the central
Building?
fires?
I think we've hired an entity that's on top of some of these construction costs, so I think deconstruction is sometimes harder, especially when you're talking in the water, the kind of work that had to be performed. That's a harder one to estimate than maybe building brand new from the ground up. But, you know, anything can happen, right? You can run into
Right.
issues, but it's based on a square footage kind of calculation, the current proposal.
I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at the current rate structure, but at 5%, that's $250 a year in interest, right? Just order of magnitude.
So anyway, I just wanted to point those things out in case, you know, they come up at a later date.
Right. So we're now at that point on the agenda where, is there any discussion we need to have about this? Any items?
It was very clear.
She was very clear, yes,
was very
and
clear.
Terry's
Oh, we very
updated this.
He was very clear.
So with that in mind, is there a motion to accept the budget or recommend the budget as it is
Second.
presented today? Okay, I didn't even get it out of my mouth. It's been moved and seconded by the same two people who always do it.
They're just very
Okay.
fast.
Let us vote on that. This-
Aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous, thank you. Now, on item 5, we do need to approve the minutes that, for December 9th, and Terry sent those out to us. Been moved and seconded. Oops, it hasn't been seconded.
I will,
Jane gets the second on this one.
I got it.
Yeah.
I beat him.
Oh, okay. Seconded by Jane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right. So before we adjourn, I want to ask, I have to write a report to the town. Are there specific things you want me to include in that report?
Electricity issues, number one discussion.
The electricity issue.
I think that was the number one.
may I
Oh,
ask,
yes, please.
would it be helpful to you if you did a draft and circulate it, and then
Oh, yes.
we come back within a very short window and say, suggest adding this or taking this, whatever.
Well, it needs to be, what I want it to be is it's consensus of this group and not one person's
No, no.
idea. Yeah.
You could have then some way to get a consensus afterwards, but to give us a chance to see what you've done and to think about it.
She's looking for help.
I'm looking for ideas, because I know how I would write it. I usually emphasize significant increases and decreases.
Sure.
Certainly, the electricity with solar power is a concern, and any other specific things that you can think of?
That's why we made you chair.
Yeah.
So I'd have to do it.
Yeah, I like Mackin's suggestion, but I suggest we all be judicious with our comments.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
so yes, and the other thing is, we need to meet with, present our recommendations to the select board.
Can I just make a comment
Sure.
about you discussing your
Yeah, yeah.
report? And I did speak during part of it, so excuse me if you addressed this, but, so Linda sends out a draft. You all respond only to Linda.
No
not to e-
reply alls.
Not
No,
to
no,
everybody,
right.
with your own suggestions, and then Linda tends to work things in and sends out a final, and again, you respond just to Linda.
However, my concern is, let's say Marge says, well, you really should have put something in about this. And nobody else agrees to that. I'd rather not, rather have it be something that we all agree was significant.
Luckily, that hasn't happened yet, but we could schedule a meeting.
Okay.
Well, you could
Okay.
discuss
Well,
it
the
at
other
the
thing-
reconciliation meeting.
With the
With
select
the
board.
select board,
That's
yeah.
what my thought
Yeah.
was, to
Yeah.
present. And when is that meeting?
Well, that's what we want to
That's our
talk
next
about.
item, yes. So usually, last year we had on January 10th, which is a date that will live in my mind for a long time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sounds
It was
momentous.
right after a big storm.
Yeah, well, you could put that in the notes, the impact on the budgets.
And the 10th this year is a Friday, so I think you want, is it? Something like
It
January
is a
8th.
Friday.
You want January 8th? Well, we did it on a Wednesday last year, I don't know why.
At this point, I don't know.
Okay,
I think it's fine, everything's fine.
okay. What did you suggest, Linda?
I just threw out January 8th, which was the coinciding to the January 10th meeting we had last year.
Oh, we did it on a Wednesday last
We
year?
did it on a Wednesday, I can't remember why, if it was when the select board could meet. And it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, it would. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
So when are we doing this?
The 8th? Is that what you said?
Yes. Okay, and I'll try to have a draft ready before that, which you guys will have received before the meeting, so we can discuss it either right before the meeting or right after the meeting.
What time on January 8th?
What, I'll throw out 3 o'clock. Jane, does that work for you? Okay. And of course, you have to see if that works for the selectmen. When does that report have to be done by?
Tomorrow.
Oh. For the end, it's like the end of January or
Yeah.
something?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Are we done? Okay, I think we are, and I do want to thank everybody on this committee and our administrators and our select person who's with us for helping us out so much this year.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you all.
We are adjourned.